I've been in software testing a long time, so I have both been on the receiving end of a assessment done by an independent third party, and I've also done multiple assessments for other organizations. In the beginning of my career, I felt like software testing assessments weren't really necessary because I felt like I had a good command on the things that really needed to be done as a part of the software testing organization. But over time, I basically became a fan of the software testing assessments, especially when an outside entity comes in. And I'll really tell you about the key of that, in my opinion, as it relates to that at the end of this video. So if you'll stick around for that, we will have conversations as to why I believe these things are critical and are important. So let me talk about what is a software testing assessment. So in general, you have a assessment. Some people believe there's this maturity model, TMMi, which you may have heard of, which essentially ranks certain conditions as it relates to software testing. So it could be things like process or processes followed from that perspective. You can go in and basically rank and rate things like performance testing and automation and the maturity around all that. And then there are things that are assessed as it relates to, it could be environment management, there could be the code deployment process as it relates to code migrating from one environment to another, and the maturity in general that relates to that. So you have part of the assessment would be on your maturity level. Some people feel like that is important. Others feel like, no, it's really not necessary because I already know that my software testing organization is not mature. So they feel parts of that may not be as critical and others. And then there are certain rating scales. So essentially it starts from a level 1 to a level 5. And in general, like unless you're doing critical functions or things that are human life or sending a rocket to the moon or something drastic like that, that you may not need to get to a maturity level 5, for example. So in most organizations nowadays, I feel like a maturity level of a 3 is sufficient to basically get you what you need. And in order to get to those higher levels, it takes a lot more time, energy, and effort. So it really doesn't make sense necessarily to get to that level 5. That's my thought process as it relates to some maturity scale and things from that perspective. Now, I do feel like there is value of an independent company coming in and doing the assessment because it helps to eliminate as much as you can some of the internal biases that you may think about. For example, if it's my own QA organization, I'm going to feel like things are either good or not good, but I'm going to already have formed my opinion. So it really helps to have an independent person or entity, probably one that hasn't worked in your organization before, right? Or if they have been around, like you probably want to pick somebody new within that company to actually do the assessment so that there's not this bias that is easily to create and basically be involved with the situation itself. I am actually currently working on an assessment now. And so what does that involve? In general, you want to have interviews with people within the QA organization and also interviews of people outside of the organization but that may interact with them. For example, if you wanted to talk to the business and to gauge what is their perception of QA or what value could they bring. You also want to probably interview people within the development organization to figure out like what is their perception, what things does QA do well, what does it not do well, and just get their thought. And then you certainly want to interview the leadership of these different groups and different organizations and get their perspective about that, because that is helpful to understand what their opinions are, what their expectations are. So some sample questions that I usually will ask is, what things within the software testing organization are working well? Another question I may ask is, what things do you feel like need to improve? I also have recently started asking a question about, if you felt like within this organization, what would be one thing that you could change if you could change something? And I've gotten a lot of different responses, a lot of great responses that really help me answer that question. And then from the assessment part of it and just really asking questions, like you want to do deeper dives into certain things, right? What is your process around test automation? Tell me, how do you initiate that really from beginning to end? Or if you're having a new project, like what are the processes and procedures that you follow as it relates to this particular project? And what are the various stage gates of quality as it relates to initiation, reviewing requirements, creating a test plan, building test cases, execution of test cases, how do you capture defects? All these things you want to understand as a part of the assessment, so that basically you can take multiple weeks of interviews and you can basically compile that information. So a lot of times I'll take the transcript, I'll save the transcript, I will record the transcript, and then get information from that. I also have been leveraging AI to do some of these things, so it makes it a lot easier. So I will then compile all the information. I will also put that in a more of a detailed Word document for each interview, and then I'll take and have a larger document that basically has compiled everything and kind of put it in together. And then I'll create a PowerPoint presentation and then go over that PowerPoint presentation with the executives, right? And one of the things from a assessment is that you could leverage is to create, obviously you're going to have things that are working well. The organization really needs to know about that, but also you want to focus on improvement items. So what things can be improved? And then even off of that, you can build a roadmap of those improvement items. If you wanted to take a 12-month roadmap, or if you wanted to have more of a 3-year roadmap, what things can you improve over that period of time? And then in certain situations, you may want to do checkpoints on, okay, after year 1, has the maturity thing changed? Have improvements been made? After year 2, what does that look like? And then after year 3, as an example, so that you have a historical view of things and the improvements that have been done, and what does the organization look like after that period of time. So I think those are some of the things that are done more from an assessment perspective. But really, to me, as a recipient of somebody doing an assessment, another thing that it really does is it builds credibility by an outside entity really having that. And the outside entity often can influence the leadership of the organization to say, hey, not only are there people internally saying these things need to improve, but an outside entity has come in and they have basically come up with recommendations of things that the organization needs to improve on. And so there's that added credibility. And a lot of times those entities can help kind of get you there in terms of if there's specific areas or opportunities, for example, in program governance, whether the things that we need to do to have a solid enterprise test strategy, that could be something that that outside entity could help you with. They also could help you with test automation. For example, if you do API testing but don't have a centralized API repository, for example, that could be something they could kind of help you with from that perspective. That's why I feel like there is value having that outside independent organization to help you come up with this approach and this strategy. And so, for that reason, I feel like either from the company doing the assessment or the company that the assessment is being done on, there's value from that perspective from both sides of the equation. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the importance of a software testing assessment and talk to you a little bit more about those details. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. I'll continue to have additional videos around software testing strategy. If you like this video, please obviously like it and subscribe to my QA Revolution channel. And I look forward to talking to you in the next video. Thank you.